Everyone thinks their worst nightmare is something dramatic. Fire, flood, the kind of disaster you see on the evening news. But mine started with the quiet thud of paper against my front door. It was 5 a.m, the sky that strange. Bruised purple it wears before sunrise, when even the birds are too tired to sing. I wasn't awake yet. Not really. I'm not a 5 a.m. person. Truth is, I'm barely a 9 a.m. person. My only goal that early is not to trip over my own feet on the way to the coffee pot. The thud came again. Sticky, papery, like a woodpecker with bad aim. At first, I thought it was just another pizza flyer or some guy advertising gutter cleaning. My wife Sarah was still asleep, breathing slow and steady. I envied her. She could sleep through anything. But I couldn't ignore the noise anymore. With a groan, I rolled out of bed, dragged on jeans, and stepped barefoot onto the cold floor. The living room was dark, quiet, too quiet. I squinted through the little glass pane in my door. And that's when I saw her, Karen Blake, HOA president, self-appointed queen of Lakeview Meadows. She stood there in a neon power-walking outfit that probably cost more than my car, clipboard in hand, a stack of angry red tags tucked under her arm. She slapped one on my neighbor Trent's door with the smug satisfaction of a judge handing down a sentence. And then she saw me. Our eyes met through the glass. She didn't smile. Karen never smiled. She just gave me a little nod, the kind that said, I'm in charge here. You're just another piece on my board. I opened the door. The morning air hit me, crisp, sharp, carrying the smell of cut grass and something else. Something sour. Karen, I rasped. My voice always sounded broken before coffee. Bit early for arts and crafts, don't you think? She didn't laugh. Karen never laughed, not unless it was at someone else's expense. Instead, she pointed to the fresh red tag she'd just slapped on my door. Bold letters screamed across it like a warning siren. Danger. Do not enter. Potential toxic mold hazard. My stomach dropped. Mold? That was new. Bills I could handle. Trash day confusion, sure. But toxic mold? She had to be kidding. This isn't a craft project, Mark, she said, voice dripping with the fake sweetness she used whenever she wanted obedience. This is a public health emergency. We've detected evidence of a significant outbreak of... She paused, almost relishing the moment, then pronounced it like a spell. Stachybotrys chartarum. I blinked at her. My brain wasn't ready for made-up wizard words at dawn. English, Karen, I muttered. Small words, please, she sighed. Black mold, Mark. Toxic black mold. It's extremely dangerous. We have to act fast. As if on cue, a white van rolled up to the curb. No company logo. Just blank, clinical, white. 2 men climbed out, matching vests labeled Everpure Environmental, carrying metal cases that looked far too serious for 5 a.m. They weren't scientists. No, they had the vibe of guys who'd try to sell you a stereo system out of the back of their van, but Karen welcomed them like heroes. For your safety, she continued, lowering her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. Entry is forbidden until Everpure can conduct a preliminary air quality assessment. They'll begin at 8. Just a formality. A formality. Nothing Karen Blake ever did was just a formality. Every move she made was a power play, a step closer to control. And as I stood there, bare feet on the concrete, staring at that bright red tag on my own front door, a thought burned through the fog of my sleepiness. This wasn't about mold. This was about her. You're telling me I can't go into my own house? I asked, voice low. She tilted her head, the smugness returning. It's not a choice, Mark. HOA bylaws, Section 9, subsection C, we have authority to act in emergencies. She said emergencies like it was a weapon. The Everpure men stood behind her like bouncers, arms crossed, silent. I glanced back at Sarah, still asleep in bed, then at the warm, ordinary rooms behind me. My house didn't smell like mold. It smelled like last night's laundry detergent, like Sarah's lavender candles. It smelled like home. And now, because Karen Blake decided it, it was marked like a crime scene. She turned on her heel, red tags flapping in her hand as she stalked to the next house. Another slap. Another curse. Cast. My fists clenched. It wasn't just paper, it was a claim, a message. Your house isn't yours anymore. It's mine to control. I knew then that I wasn't looking at a health warning. I was looking at the first shot in a quiet war. A war fought with clipboards, fake emergencies, and intimidation. And she thought she had already won. The red tag glared back at me, daring me to fight. And I knew there was no way in hell I was letting her win. The doorbell rang at exactly 8 o'clock. Not a minute early, not a minute late. That alone told me everything I needed to know. These guys weren't here for safety. They were here for business. Sarah hovered behind me, biting her lip. She'd already Googled toxic mold symptoms and was convinced we were slowly dying in our own home. That's the problem with people like her. They care too much. People like Karen, they feed on that. I opened the door with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Gentlemen," I said, "welcome to the scene of the crime." The bigger one, Gary, according to his name tag, didn't smile back. His neck was wider than my arm, clipboard clutched in his meaty hands. His partner, smaller, twitchier, clutched a black box with a tube sticking out of it. They looked more like a bad magician's act than environmental specialists. "Sir," Gary said in a voice that was all business, "we need to conduct an air quality test immediately." He pushed forward, but I planted my feet. This was my house. You don't just walk in. Hold it, Gary. Show me some ID first. State certification if you don't mind. That stopped him. His brow furrowed, his jaw tightened. He glanced at his nervous partner, who gave a tiny shrug. Gary pulled out a laminated card that looked like it had been printed on someone's home computer. The certification number was smeared, half unreadable. The smaller guy flicked on the box, which started to hum like a toy vacuum cleaner. "This is our ionic particle counter," he squeaked. He waved the tube through the doorway like a wand. Beep, beep. A red light flashed. He looked at Gary, eyes wide with fake alarm. "Oh dear, levels are very high, very high." I almost laughed. 10 seconds in my doorway and suddenly my house was a toxic wasteland? Please. "Wow," I said, dripping sarcasm. "You guys are amazing. Birthday parties too, or just mold scams?" Gary ignored me. He scribbled something on his clipboard, then turned it around. At the bottom of the form was a number, $5,000. "This is the estimate for the minimum remediation," he said. "Air scrubbing, sterilization, follow-up testing. We can start this afternoon once you sign. 5,000. Just like that. Behind me, Sarah's voice wavered. "Mark, maybe it's real. What if we're breathing this right now?" Her fear, that was the weapon. That's what Karen and her thugs were counting on. I turned back to Gary. "So, let me get this straight. You wave your little magic vacuum at the air for 5 seconds, it beeps, and now you want $5,000? That about right?" His face reddened. "Sir, this is a serious health risk." "Then prove it," I snapped. "Leave your little petri dish. Follow state guidelines. 48 hours, independent lab. Until then, you're not scrubbing or spraying or touching a thing in my house. Now get off my porch." The two men froze. This wasn't how the script was supposed to go. The homeowners were supposed to be scared. Supposed to hand over a signature, a check, their dignity, but I wasn't playing along. Gary's jaw worked. "Karen Blake authorized us. I don't care if the Queen of England authorized you. Get off my porch." We stared each other down. I didn't blink. He blinked first. Snatching the clipboard back, he spat, "Fine, but when the lab confirms it, the price will be higher. Emergency rates." They stomped off to their van, leaving behind a sealed petri dish on my doorstep. Sarah grabbed my arm. "Mark, what did you do? You made them angry." "Good," I said. "They're crooks, and crooks don't like being caught." But even as I said it, a plan was forming. That petri dish wasn't harmless. It was bait. They were too confident, too certain. They weren't waiting for results. They already knew what the results would be. Which meant one thing. The game was rigged, and if they wanted to play games, fine. Two could play. The next hour, I drove to the one place I never thought I'd go. A craft store. The aisles reeked of potpourri, lined with glitter and fake flowers. I felt like an intruder. But I was a man on a mission. I bought 3 things: a pack of tiny spy cameras, clear tape so thin it was almost invisible, and a bottle of blue food coloring. My basket looked like the world's saddest birthday party. Home, I laid everything on the kitchen table. Sarah crossed her arms. "What is this? You're not making model airplanes. What are you planning?" I held up the tape. "Proof. That's what I'm planning." She sighed. "Mark, can't we just hire another company? A real test?" "No," I said firmly. "That proves my house is clean. I don't just want to be clean. I want to prove they're liars." She knew better than to argue. My stubborn streak might have been my worst trait, but tonight it was the only weapon I had. I knelt by the big air return vent in the living room. Using a sliver of clear tape, I sealed the seam between the grate and the wall. Invisible to the eye, but fragile. Anyone who opened it would break it. My tripwire. Then I placed a paper towel inside the duct, dropped a single bead of blue food coloring onto it, and sealed it back. That single dot of dye was my smoking gun. If anyone tampered with the vent, the mist would send the dye splattering onto the grate, a stain that shouldn't exist. Next, the cameras. One hidden in the bookshelf aimed at the vent, another tucked inside a fake plant at the front door, a third perched high in the kitchen, motion activated, streaming to my phone. Finally, I pulled out a cheap notebook and began logging everything. The red tag, the names on the Everpure vests, the exact time they arrived and left, the unbroken tape seal photographed, the spotless grate, documentation. It felt almost silly, like a kid playing detective. But deep down, I knew. This wasn't just a neighborhood squabble anymore. This was a trap, and I was about to spring it. 2 days passed, nothing. The red tag stayed. My neighbor Trent, poor Trent, paid up. $5,000 gone. He told me later they showed him a picture of a petri dish, black as tar. He thought they saved his life. I didn't have the heart to tell him. On the 3rd morning, the phone rang. A sweet voice from the HOA office claimed there was a water main issue. "Residents must evacuate for safety," she said. I hung up and turned to Sarah. My pulse quickened. Showtime. We loaded into the car, drove just far enough for Everpure's van to see us leave. But instead of going to work or running errands, I parked 2 blocks away, phone in hand, camera feeds glowing. Sarah chewed her thumbnail, nervous. "What if they catch the cameras?" she whispered. "They won't," I said, though my heart hammered against my ribs. We waited. 10 minutes. 15. My palms were slick with sweat. Then, the feed flickered. The front door camera lit up, a key twisted in my lock, and 2 shadows slipped inside. The lock turned with a soft click, and my chest tightened. I watched on my phone screen as the front door swung open, the camera catching the 2 shadows slipping inside. Gary first, broad and smug as ever, his sidekick, nervous and twitchy, close, behind with a duffel bag in his hand. They weren't wearing the vests anymore. No company logos. Just 2 ordinary men sneaking into a house that wasn't theirs. My thumb hovered over the record button. Then I pressed it. The cameras were rolling, every second being saved. On the feed, Gary closed the door behind him. His voice carried clear through the microphone. "Adler was a real pain. Make sure this one comes back black as night." That single line told me everything. This wasn't an inspection, it was sabotage. The smaller guy knelt, unzipping the duffel bag. He pulled out a spray bottle, the kind you'd use to mist houseplants, and a sealed petri dish. My hands trembled as I zoomed the camera. There it was, the evidence they planned to discover later, already in their possession. Gary moved. To the air return vent in my living room, the same vent I'd sealed with that sliver of tape. He crouched down, screwdriver in hand, and popped the cover loose. My gut twisted as I imagined that invisible seal snapping. Phase 1 of my trap, triggered. "All right, put it in," Gary muttered. The nervous one handed him the petri dish. Gary tucked it into the duct like a thief hiding loot, then gestured for the spray. The sidekick leaned down, aimed into the vent, and squeezed the trigger. A fine mist sprayed into the darkness, invisible to anyone who didn't know what to look for. But I knew. I was staring at it through the lens of my bookshelf camera, heart pounding in my throat. That mist was enough. It rippled the paper towel. Inside the vent, the drop of food coloring bled, bursting into a faint streak of blue that kissed the inside of the grate. My trap worked. That tiny, impossible smudge would be their undoing. Gary screwed the grate back in place, dusted off his hands, and stood up with a satisfied smirk. They thought they'd just sealed the deal. They thought they were leaving behind perfect evidence. But then, Gary froze. He leaned closer to the grate, squinting. My breath caught. He saw it. The spot. That faint blue dot, shimmering under the morning light. What the hell is that? He muttered. The nervous one crouched down. What is it? Paint? Gary rubbed at it with his thumb, but it was inside the grate. Out of reach. His jaw tightened. Forget it, he said quickly, standing. Yep, probably nothing. Let's get out of here. They grabbed the duffel and turned toward the door, and that's when it happened. The lock turned again. The door swung inward, and there, frozen in the frame, stood Karen Blake, queen of the HOA, clipboard in hand, the master key still dangling from the lock. For once, her smile faltered. Because sitting on my couch, coffee mugs in hand, were two people she hadn't expected. Inspector Singh and Officer Garcia, calm, waiting. Body cams rolling. The clipboard slipped from Karen's fingers, papers scattering like snow across the floor. Good morning, ma'am, Garcia said evenly, rising from my couch. Interior entry requires consent or a warrant. HOA bylaws don't change that. Karen's mouth opened, but no words came. Inspector Singh stood, eyes locked on Karen. Posting fake health tags isn't an emergency. It's a crime. And today, Ms. Blake, you'll be answering for it. For a heartbeat, the room was silent, the kind of silence you could feel pressing against your ears. Then a siren chirped outside. Backup had arrived. 2 more officers appeared on the lawn, bright yellow police on their vests, scanning the street, securing the scene. On my phone screen, I saw it all. The ever-pure men pale and frozen. Karen stuck in the doorway. My house suddenly transformed into a crime scene. I climbed out of my car and walked up the path like a director stepping onto his set. This was my stage, my story, and they were trapped in it now. Karen's eyes widened when she saw me. She opened her mouth, maybe to scold, maybe to spin, but nothing came out. For the first time, she looked cornered. Inside, Gary and his partner sat stiff, eyes darting between the inspector and the officer. The smug confidence was gone. Now they looked like kids caught shoplifting. Inspector Singh crouched by the vent. With gloved hands, she removed the grate, revealing the smear of blue and the planted petri dish. Carefully, she sealed them into evidence bags marking the time and date. That's it, she said, holding up the bagged grate. The proof you mentioned, Mr. Adler. It'll hold. Garcia bagged the spray bottle, logging it as evidence. Chain of custody confirmed, he said, voice steady. Everything by the book. The weight of it hit me then. Not just relief, but vindication. My silly little plan with tape and food coloring had worked. They weren't just caught. They were trapped, every move documented, every trick exposed. Singh straightened, turning to Gary and his partner. Her voice was ice. What exactly was in that mist? Gary stammered, sweat beading his forehead. It was a standard atmospheric compound for testing. Really? Singh cut in. Because we're going to test it, and if it contains contaminants you introduce deliberately, that's fraud. That's criminal. The word hung in the air like a blade. Fraud. Gary's lips trembled. The smaller one sat down hard on the couch, pale as a sheet. He looked ready to confess just to make it stop. Garcia's pen scratched across his notebook. Names, orders, who hired you? We'll need everything. The scammers slumped. Karen stood frozen in the doorway, clipboard at her feet, the power she'd clutched for so long slipping through her fingers. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt something new, something sharp and satisfying. Hope. The living room didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt like a command center, or maybe a courtroom, with the walls closing in on 3 guilty people who thought they'd be safe forever. The air was heavy, tense, almost buzzing. Gary and his partner, Kevin, as I later learned, sat stiff on my couch, their shoulders hunched like schoolboys caught cheating on a test. Karen was still frozen in the doorway, the master key dangling like a noose from the lock. "Mr. Adler," Inspector Singh said, straightening from the vent, the sealed evidence bag in her hand. "Your preparation was clever, very clever. But this is only the start. To make this stick, we need a trail, something that ties them directly to her." She nodded toward Karen. Garcia's pen scratched against his notepad. He looked at Gary, eyes steady, voice calm but sharp as a blade. "Let's start simple, identification. Then I want to see your work order from the HOA. Gary's face was red, his jaw tight. He didn't answer. But Kevin, poor, twitchy Kevin, was crumbling already. His hands shook as he dug through his pockets. "Here," he squeaked, handing over a laminated card. Garcia raised an eyebrow. The kind of smirk cops make when they know the game is over. "Mr. Adler," Singh said, "you mentioned emails?" I nodded. Dozens, all from Karen. Threats dressed up as warnings, planting fear, one message at a time. I fetched my laptop. Singh sat at my dining table like she owned it, scrolling through the folder I'd saved. Her eyes narrowed. "There it is," she murmured. "Community health alerts, then confirmation of mold nearby, and finally..." She tapped the last email. "Emergency action required. Direct contract with Everpure Environmental." She snorted. "State certified," she wrote. "I'll be checking on that." Meanwhile, Garcia leaned closer to the 2 men on my couch. He didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He just let the silence drag until Kevin cracked. "It wasn't my idea," Kevin blurted, voice high and frantic. "I just did what Gary told me, what Dennis told him. I didn't know it would..." "Quiet," Gary hissed, but it was too late. "Dennis?" Garcia's pen paused. "Last name?" Kevin swallowed hard. "Cole. Dennis Cole. He owns Everpure." The room shifted. Singh's head lifted, eyes meeting mine. "Cole. A name to follow." "Interesting," Garcia murmured. "And Dennis Cole. How does he know our HOA president?" Gary stared at the floor. Karen finally found her voice. "This is ridiculous," she snapped. "These are contractors hired for safety. If they overstepped, it's on them." Her mask was cracking, just a little, but enough for me to see the panic beneath. Garcia didn't flinch. "Is that why they arrived in an unmarked van? Used a builder key meant for fire or flood? Waited down the street until the homeowners left? That's your definition of safety?" Karen's lips tightened, but she didn't answer. The radio on Garcia's shoulder crackled. He listened, then smiled. "Copy that." He clicked it off and turned back, voice steady. "That was my partner. We ran the van's plates, registered, to Dennis Cole. And wouldn't you know it, Cole has a brother-in-law, Bill Reading, HOA treasurer." The room went still. I looked at Karen. Her jaw flexed. A flicker of fear crossed her face. It all made sense. The family tie. The money flowing neatly from neighbors' pockets into theirs. The whole scam wasn't just Karen's ego trip. It was a business. Singh copied the emails onto a thumb drive. "With your consent, Mr. Adler, these are going into evidence. Police can request full HOA servers if needed." "Take them all," I said. Every smug word. On the couch, Kevin was unraveling. His hands twisted together like ropes. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," he babbled. "We just put the dishes in the vents. That's all. We didn't think anyone would notice." "You didn't think anyone would fight back," I muttered. Singh's voice cut through the room, cold, firm. "We'll test your dishes, your sprays, everything. If we find pre-inoculation, if we find planted spores, that's fraud and conspiracy." "You do understand what that means?" Kevin nodded frantically. Gary stared at the floor. Karen opened her mouth again, desperate now. "This is absurd. The HOA has authority." Garcia raised a hand. No. Authority doesn't mean immunity. You'll have your chance to explain yourself downtown. Outside, the backup units shifted on the lawn. Neighbors were beginning to peek through curtains, drawn by the quiet flashing of patrol lights. The queen of the HOA, caught in her own web, standing in my doorway with nothing left but a shaking clipboard at her feet. Singh bagged the spray bottle, the petri dish, the blue-stained grate. Every click of plastic, every scribble on an evidence. Tag was another nail in their coffin. Finally, Garcia closed his notebook. He stood tall looking at Gary and Kevin. We're going to need your statements. And I suggest you cooperate, because right now you're just pawns. But pawns who stay quiet, they go down with the queen. Kevin broke. It was Karen, he cried, pointing at her with trembling hands. She said it was easy money, said no one would question it. We were just supposed to make it look real. Karen spun on him, eyes wild. Shut up, you idiot, she spat. But it was too late. The words were out. The room had shifted. The tide had turned. I sat back, watching it all unfold. My house wasn't a prison anymore. It wasn't a trap. It was a courtroom, and the truth was finally on trial. And for the first time, Karen Blake, the untouchable queen, looked very, very small. The next night, the clubhouse was packed. Standing room only, every folding chair taken, every corner crowded with neighbors who usually had better things to do than sit through HOA meetings. But tonight wasn't about mailbox colors or lawn heights. Tonight was about $5,000, about betrayal, about Karen Blake. The air was electric. I could feel it in the room, like a bottle of soda that had been shaken and was just waiting for the cap to blow off. Sarah and I slipped. In near the back, Trent just behind us. He held his Everpure invoice in his hand like a losing lottery ticket. Others clutched theirs too, paper proof of the money they'd bled out in fear. Up front, the board sat like judges in a bad play. Karen in the middle, crisp white blazer, her mask of calm perfection firmly in place. To her right, Bill Redding, the treasurer, looked gray, sweaty, and miserable, a man who knew the walls were closing in. Karen banged her gavel. All right, everyone, let's settle down. Welcome to the monthly meeting of the Lakeview Meadows Homeowners Association. Her voice was smooth, steady. She launched into her usual script. Lawn maintenance, parking complaints, the color of someone's shutters. She spoke as though nothing had happened, as though she still owned this room. But the neighbors weren't listening. Not tonight. After 5 minutes, Mrs. Gable stood. Sweet old Mrs. Gable, who baked cookies for the whole street, her hands usually shaking with kindness. But tonight they trembled with rage. She held up a piece of paper, her invoice. Karen, she said, her voice cracking. I don't care about mailboxes. I care about this. She shook the paper. $5,000. I'm retired. I live on a fixed income. You told me my home was poisoned. You told me I was in danger. The room erupted. Voices rose, neighbors waving invoices in the air. Accusations flew like sparks. Scam! Thief! Liar! Karen banged the gavel harder, her voice sharp now. Order! We will have order! But no one listened. I stood slowly, not shouting, not waving paper, just standing. One by one, heads turned. The noise dimmed. Soon the whole room was watching me. Even Karen stopped her furious banging. Karen, I said, my voice steady but carrying across the room. We all got your emails. We all saw the red tags. You told us there was an emergency. You told us we had to use your certified specialist. Everpure Environmental. A low murmur rippled through the crowd. I let the silence hang. Then I spoke again. Here's the truth. Everpure isn't random. It's owned by Dennis Cole, and Dennis Cole just happens to be the brother-in-law of our treasurer, Bill Reading. I snapped to Bill. He shrank back in his chair, sweat dripping down his temple. Karen's mask slipped for the first time. Her voice went shrill. That is a baseless accusation, Mark. This was about safety. Was it? I cut in. Was it about safety when your contractors broke into my house with a master key? Was it about safety when they planted a fake mold sample in my vent? The room went silent. A heavy, absolute silence. Karen's face went white. "That's a lie," she screeched. "You have no proof." I smiled faintly. "Oh, I have proof. Video, audio, and so do the police. Inspector Singh and Officer Garcia have it all. The petri dish your men planted, the spray bottle they used, the grate with the blue stain, every bit of it's in evidence right now." Gasps filled the room. Neighbors turned, whispering furiously. Karen tried to recover, but the panic in her eyes betrayed her. And then it happened. Bill snapped. He stood so fast his chair crashed backward. His face was red, eyes wet. "I didn't want to do it," he wailed, pointing a trembling finger at Karen. "She made me. She planned the whole thing." "Shut up, Bill," Karen barked, her mask shattering. "You idiot, shut your mouth." But he couldn't stop. The dam had broken. "She came to me a month ago," he shouted, tears streaming now. "She said Everpure would give her a $1,000 kickback for every job. All I had to do was approve the payments. She told me to keep it quiet, said it was easy money for the reserve fund." A ripple of outrage surged through the room. People shouted, voices overlapping, fists shaking in the air. Bill fumbled with his phone, hands trembling. "I have the texts," he cried. His fingers flew across the screen, and a moment later, phones all around the room buzzed. Mine, Sarah's, Trent's, everyone's. We looked down. There it was. The whole thread. Karen's messages in black and white. "Everpure is a go. Start next week. Process invoices same day. Just tell people their houses are poison. They'll pay anything." It's like printing money. The words spread across the room like fire. A roar of fury rose, unstoppable. Neighbors leapt to their feet, waving phones, shouting accusations. "Thief! Liar! You stole from us!" Karen stood frozen, pale, and cornered, the gavel slipping from her grip. For once, the queen had no power. The kingdom had turned on her, and as I watched her crumble beneath the weight of her own arrogance, I realized something. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It wasn't even about the fraud. It was about dignity, about neighbors standing together against someone who thought she could rule us with fear. And tonight, that fear finally broke. The neighborhood felt different the next morning, quieter, almost stunned, like the air itself was holding its breath after the chaos of the meeting. No more red tags fluttered on doors. The Everpure van was gone. But beneath the calm, I could feel it. Anger simmering, waiting for the next step. For me, that step came on Wednesday afternoon. My phone rang with an unfamiliar number. I almost didn't answer, but something in my gut told me to pick up. "Mr. Adler?" The voice was calm, clipped, professional. "This is Inspector Paula Singh from the health department." My heart jumped. This was it, the moment everything hinged on. "I have the preliminary lab report in front of me," she said. "Final confirmation will take longer, but this is more than enough for charges. I thought you'd want to know." I gripped the phone tighter. "I'm listening." She flipped papers on her end. "First, the petri dish your friends from Everpure left in your vent. The lab cultured it. It shows an aggressive strain of Stachybotrys chartarum." My chest sank. Toxic black mold? So maybe it was real after all? "Yes," she said quickly, hearing the pause in my silence. "But here's the key. It grew too fast. Too perfectly. The kind of uniform growth you never see in residential samples, which made us suspicious. So we tested the dish itself." She paused for effect. The medium was pre-inoculated. I blinked. "English, Inspector?" Her voice softened. "The mold was already in the dish, Mr. Adler. They brought it with them. It didn't come from your home." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Then it hit me like a wave. So it was planted. All of it. They were planting evidence. Definitive proof, she confirmed. Fraud. Deliberate contamination. I punched the air, relief exploding in my chest. Sarah, across the room, looked up. I mouthed, "It worked." She smiled, tears shining in her eyes. But Singh wasn't finished. "We also analyzed the spray bottle they used, the mist they puffed into your vent. It was a prop. Just water, a little dust, and spores you'd find in any home. Harmless. The real toxic mold was in the dish all along. The trick was simple. A cheap magic show dressed up as science, and they almost got away with it. Was still grinning when another call came an hour later. This time it was Officer Garcia. His voice carried a rare edge of excitement. "Mark," he said, "you're not going to believe this. Try me." We pulled the pool lot surveillance footage, hours of tape, but we found it. 5 in the morning, the day this all started. Everpure's van pulls in. A few minutes later, Karen Blake's car pulls up beside it. I sat forward. "Go on." Dennis Cole steps out of the van, owner of Everpure. He's carrying a cardboard box. Walks straight to Karen's car. Hands it to her. She gives him a white envelope. Then she pops her trunk, takes out a second cardboard box, hands it to him. He loads it into his van and they both drive away. My blood ran hot. "The swap," I whispered. "That's exactly what it was," Garcia said. "First box, pre-spiked dirty Petri dishes. Second box, clean, sterile dishes they were supposed to use. She kept the rigged ones to hand out to her crew. He pretended to pick up supplies. It's all on tape." I closed my eyes, letting it sink in. The conspiracy wasn't just theory anymore. It was captured in grainy black and white, too. Criminals trading boxes like smugglers in a parking lot. "Mark," Garcia said, his voice harder now, "this ties her directly. Between the lab results, the treasurer's confession, the texts, and now the video, we've got her. The DA signed off 10 minutes ago. We're executing a search warrant at Everpure tonight." My pulse hammered in my ears. After days of fear, stress, and doubt, the tide had finally fully turned. I didn't see the raid in person, but Garcia described it later, his voice painting every detail. Everpure's office wasn't much, just a sad little storefront in a dying strip mall, squeezed between a laundromat and a nail salon. Dusty blinds on the windows, a hand-painted sign that looked like it might fall off the wall. From the outside, it could have been any failing business. But inside, it was the engine of a scam. 4 officers went in. 2 uniforms, Garcia and a detective from the fraud division. Dennis Cole himself opened the door. Garcia said his face went white as a sheet when he saw the warrant. He didn't argue, didn't even speak. Just stepped aside, shoulders slumped, knowing the game was up. The inside was chaos. Piles of invoices on cheap desks, overflowing ashtrays, coffee stains on every surface. Not a lab, just a boiler room for fear. And then they hit the jackpot. In the very first file cabinet, stacks of bright red tags. Hundreds of them, identical to the ones Karen plastered on doors, fresh from the printer. Beside them, boxes of pre-printed invoices, $5,000, already filled in. Service descriptions vague, dates and names blank, ready to be slapped on any neighbor at a moment's notice. But the real bombshell was in Cole's desk drawer. A small black ledger book, a cash book. Garcia described the neat columns inside. Left side, addresses. Mine, Trent's, Mrs. Gable's, all the neighbors who'd been hit. Middle column, $5,000, the amount each paid. Right column, $1,000. And next to that figure, 2 initials written again and again. KB Karen Blake, the kickback ledger, the smoking gun. The detective closed the book and looked at Cole. "You're going to need a very good lawyer." Cole didn't answer. He just sank into his chair, head in his hands, and while Everpure's office was being dismantled piece by piece, another team of officers knocked on a different door. Karen's. "No drama," Garcia told me. "No shouting, no neighbors gathering to watch." She answered the door in her perfect little house, her manicured lawn behind her, the crown of her fake empire gleaming one last time. They showed her the warrant, and she just nodded. The image Garcia left me with is the one I'll carry forever. Karen Blake, queen of Lakeview Meadows, walking out of her home in handcuffs. No clipboard, no blazer, no smug smile. Just a small, ordinary woman who'd thought she could play God with people's lives, and now she was just another criminal, her empire collapsing around her. The raid was the firework. The arrest was the thunderclap. But the aftermath? That came slowly, steadily, like a tide rolling in to wash away what was left of Karen Blake's little empire. There wasn't a courtroom showdown, no dramatic jury, verdict with gasps echoing through the gallery. No. Real justice doesn't play out like a TV drama. It's quieter, methodical. Paperwork and signatures, evidence tagged and cataloged, attorneys whispering in conference rooms. Karen, Dennis Cole, and Bill Redding didn't even make it to trial. Their lawyers saw the mountain of evidence. My recordings, the lab results, the video of the box swap, the ledger with her initials, and they knew. There was no way out. So they folded. All three took plea deals. Guilty to fraud and conspiracy. No prison sentences, which stung at first. But the judge didn't go easy. Massive fines, years of probation, and best of all, permanently banned from ever serving on any HOA board or corporate committee ever again. The hammer didn't just fall, it buried them. Word spread fast. Karen's name became poison in the neighborhood. Some people almost missed her control, the structure she forced on everything. But most? They breathed easier. For the first time in years, we weren't living under her shadow. The HOA was chaos for a while, but it was the good kind. The kind where people argued about real things, trash schedules, landscaping contracts, how to fix the clubhouse roof. Normal problems. The kind of problems neighbors should have. We held an emergency election. The clubhouse was full again, but this time the energy was different. Determined. Hopeful. People volunteered who never would have dared before. Parents, retirees, even Trent, still holding his refund check like a trophy, put his name down for the maintenance committee. They nominated me for president. I laughed out loud. Me? I never wanted power. I didn't do any of this for authority or recognition. I just wanted to be left alone, to protect my home. So I shook my head. Thanks, but no. Let someone else wear the crown. I've had enough. Kingdoms for a lifetime. The best part, though, came weeks later. Refund checks started arriving, $5,000 each, straight from the HOA's insurance policy. The district attorney had leaned hard on the board's liability coverage. The community's losses were covered. One evening, Trent came bounding up my walkway, check in hand, his grin stretching ear to ear. "Mark, look at this! I got it back!" "I can't believe it!" I clapped him on the shoulder, smiling. "Told you it was a scam, Trent." He laughed, shaking his head. "I thought you were crazy, but you were right all along." Seeing that relief, seeing neighbors who'd been scammed now holding their money again, that was better than any title, any revenge. It was healing. And the HOA changed. We passed what they jokingly called the Adler Amendment, a simple rule, written in black and white. No HOA entry without a written order from a city agency, fire department, or a judge. Period. No exceptions. No more vague emergencies. No more private contractors with clipboards and scare tactics. The power shifted back to where it always should have been, with the homeowners. But the changes weren't just in bylaws, they were in us. People started talking more, looking out for each other. It wasn't just houses side by side anymore, it was a community. The kind Karen had pretended to build but never actually wanted. I'd walk down the street and see neighbors chatting in driveways, sharing updates, checking in. Mrs. Gable baking again, Trent mowing his lawn with a smile instead of a frown. Even Sarah, she said she felt safer, calmer, like the air itself was lighter. And me? I felt proud. Not for myself, but for all of us. Because we'd faced down a bully. Not the loud kind, but the worst kind. The quiet kind. The kind that hides behind rules and bylaws, that manipulates fear, that turns neighbors against each other. And we didn't just survive. We won. But still. Sometimes I'd think back to that morning. The red tag on my door. Karen's smug little nod. The way she looked at me like I was nothing more than another pawn on her board. I remembered how small I felt, standing barefoot on the concrete, staring at a sign that told me my own house wasn't mine anymore. That moment of helplessness. That sting of humiliation. And then I'd think of the final image. Karen Blake, once the untouchable queen, being let out of her perfect house in handcuffs. No power walk, no clipboard, No smile, just a regular person, stripped of everything she thought made her mighty. That's the thing about people like her. They forget something important. Power isn't real if it's built on fear. Fear fades. Fear breaks. But dignity is harder to kill. And once people remember that, no HOA president, no fraudster, no queen with a clipboard can stop them. It's strange, the things you remember. Not the victories, not the big moments everyone cheers for. No, the details that stick are smaller, quieter. For me, it's that first morning. The sound of tape slapping against my door. The sharp chill of the concrete under my bare feet. The red tag fluttering like a scarlet letter, telling me my home wasn't mine anymore. That's the image that haunted me. But now, when I walk past my door, I see something different. That same pane of glass. That same frame. Only this time, no red tag. No warning. Just a wreath Sarah hung, simple and bright. The difference is small, but to me it's everything. Because that wreath doesn't say danger. It says home. Neighbors still stop me sometimes. They thank me, tell me I saved them, call me a hero. I never know what to say. I don't feel like a hero. I wasn't brave. I was scared, terrified even. Scared of losing my house, scared of being crushed by rules written in fine print, scared of standing alone against someone who seemed untouchable. But maybe that's the truth people forget. Courage doesn't mean you aren't afraid. It means you act anyway, even when your voice shakes, even when your knees go weak. That's what Karen never understood. She thought power was about clipboards and bylaws, about yelling loud enough and scaring people into silence. But power built on fear is fragile. The moment someone speaks up, the whole thing cracks, and once one person stands, others do too. That's what happened here. It wasn't just me. It was Trent, refusing to stay quiet. It was Mrs. Gable, waving her invoice in the air with shaking hands. It was every neighbor who decided enough was enough. One voice became 2, then 20, then an entire neighborhood refusing to be ruled by fear. That's how bullies fall, not because of one big act, but because 100 small acts add up. Sometimes, late at night, I think about Karen, where she is now. Maybe sitting in a lawyer's office, signing away her savings to pay restitution. Maybe sitting alone, wondering how it all slipped through her fingers. She probably tells herself she was unlucky, that she picked the wrong neighborhood, that she trusted the wrong partners. But deep down, I think she knows. She knows it was never about luck. It was about arrogance. About forgetting that people, ordinary people, are stronger than she gave them credit for. And I think that's the real justice. Not the fines, not the probation, but the fact that Karen Blake has to live with the truth. She didn't lose to lawyers or inspectors. She lost to neighbors, to the very people she thought she controlled. Lakeview Meadows is different now. Better. We don't whisper anymore. We don't look at each other with suspicion, wondering who's next to get hit. We talk, we share, we defend each other. The other night, I walked past the clubhouse and saw kids playing flashlight tag on the lawn. Their parents sat in lawn chairs, laughing, talking, passing around lemonade. No one worried about bylaws or fines. No one looked over their shoulder, afraid a red tag might be waiting in the morning. And I realized this was what home was supposed to be all along. Not just walls and roofs and trimmed hedges, but people. A place where you belong. A place where, if someone tries to take that away, you don't fight alone. Sometimes, when I sit on my porch, I think back to that moment Karen stood frozen in my doorway. She'd unlocked my door like she owned it, ready to claim my home as hers. And then she saw the police waiting inside, saw her empire unravel in real time. The look on her face, that shock, that fear, burned into me. And I think of it now as a reminder that no matter how small you feel, no matter how powerful, the bully seems, there's always a way to fight back. Maybe not with fists, maybe not with force, but with preparation, with persistence, with dignity. That's the word I keep coming back to. Dignity. Because that's what this fight was really about. Not mold, not money, not bylaws. It was about people refusing to be humiliated, refusing to be treated like pawns, refusing to bow down to fear. And when dignity stands tall, no clipboard, no scam, no fraud can break it. So if you asked me now what my worst nightmare is, I wouldn't say fire or flood or mold. No, my worst nightmare was silence. A neighborhood, too afraid to speak. But we broke that silence. And in the end, we found something stronger than fear. We found our voices. We found each other. And we found home again.